Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are setting the geopolitical temperature to high heat because we're talking about the tech Cold War.
Right.
And you really have to forget the old ideological battles. Capitalism versus communism of the 20th century. That's history.
It's a completely different landscape now.
It is. The defining rivalry of our time isn't being fought with tanks or nukes. It's being fought with silicon and code. We're talking United States versus China, a high-stakes, really fundamental struggle for control over the core emerging technology of our era, artificial intelligence.
It's truly fascinating and maybe a little frightening how quickly the global power structure has pivoted. I mean, this mission for technological dominance, and specifically AI leadership, it's now explicitly redesigning the entire geopolitical map.
Redesigning it how exactly?
Well, our sources are confirming this rivalry
Yeah.
it's restructuring global trade, it's influencing who aligns with whom, and maybe most surprisingly, it's revealing some critical weaknesses in what we thought was the West's unshakable supremacy. This isn't just, a business competition anymore. It's a deep structural realignment of global power.
And our mission today is to unpack exactly how this technological arms race is playing out. We want to go beyond the headlines, look at the massive influence this competition is having on traditional alliances, especially in the Indo-Pacific.
Right, groups like the Quad and AUKUS.
Exactly. And critically, we're going to dive deep into what was maybe the biggest shock to Washington policy circles in recent memory, the surprising success and the cost efficiency of Chinese AI innovation.
You're talking about DeepSeek.
I'm talking about DeepSeek. We really need to understand the mechanism behind China's resilience here.
And to properly frame this, I think we need a theoretical anchor. The underlying structure of this competition, it's best viewed through the lens of what's called defensive realism.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in a nutshell, it's the idea that in an anarchic international system, meaning no world government states prioritize their own security above everything else, survival. And they counter any potential threats to maintain their position. Historically, that meant controlling oil fields or territory or having more nuclear warheads.
But now...
Now, in the 21st century, AI leadership and the control over these innovative technologies, those are the primary strategic instruments. This drive for tech supremacy is about self-preservation. It's about ensuring one side can't be coerced or just made irrelevant by the other's algorithmic advantage.
So if security is the ultimate driver, what are the new frontiers of this competition? It sounds like we're way beyond just who has the better missile guidance system.
Oh, absolutely. The competition spans three critical interconnected dimensions. First, there's pure innovation leadership who can develop the foundational breakthroughs, the next GPT.
Like big ideas.
The big ideas. Second, there's data manipulation and governance. Data is the essential fuel for all AI, and whoever sets the rules for how data is used basically controls the ecosystem. And then, maybe most critically, the semiconductor supply chains. These chips are the ultimate choke point technology. The state that controls the design, the manufacturing, and the distribution of these chips holds just a disproportionate amount of economic and military influence.
Which could lead to a splitting of the world into, what, two separate tech blocks?
That's exactly where it's heading. Two ideologically aligned networks that can't or won't talk to each other.
That sets the stage perfectly.
Yeah.
So let's move into our first section and really detail the U.S. strategy, this idea of innovation dominance and the major geopolitical choke point that threatens it.
The strategic shift is just. It's undeniable. The whole contest for global supremacy has migrated from nuclear warheads to algorithms. The modern power hierarchy is defined not by political principles, really, but by which nation controls the core technology ecosystem.
And both the U.S. and China see this clearly.
They both recognize AI's critical role in, one, ensuring national security, and two, transforming global governance frameworks to suit their interests.
And as it stands, the United States is still the incumbent, the world leader in cutting-edge AI, viewing China's rapid developments not just as, an economic rivalry,
but as a direct strategic challenge.
a strategic challenge to its state security, its economy, and its entire system of liberal democratic values.
And the sources confirm the U.S. excels across the primary AI domains for a few key reasons. There's the unparalleled innovative research, a really vibrant and dynamic tech ecosystem,
Silicon
Valley, and crucially, massive private sector investment that can scale innovation at a speed that's just breathtaking. And this leadership is cemented by what you could call foundational software dominance.
What do you mean by that?
Think about it. Global AI development, for the most part, relies on US-developed frameworks, things like Google's TensorFlow and Meta's PyTorch.
They're the basic building blocks.
They're the scaffolding, the basic tools that every researcher, every startup, every major developer in the world uses to build and train their models. So this really stresses American influence on the global AI ecosystem because they control the R&D pipeline and the monetization models right from the very start.
And we see that dominance reflected in major industry leadership. Can you walk us through some specific, high-impact examples of where the U.S. is currently leading the pack?
Certainly. I mean, in the generalized AI space, you have the big names, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google AI. They've set the global pace by creating these leading-edge large language models, or LLMs, your GPTs and your BERTs, and just dominating generative AI more broadly.
They're the household names.
They're the front-facing standard for the world. But beyond those generalized models, U.S. leadership is also really visible in domain-specific applications. For instance, in medical diagnostics, AI-integrated solutions are totally transforming how we detect and treat diseases.
With companies like IBM Watson Health.
Exactly, and a whole host of startups focused on precision medicine. Or look at the self-driving vehicle sector. Tesla, Waymo, Cruise. They are the acknowledged leaders in integrating these incredibly complex AI-powered navigation systems into physical machines. They are setting the global standard for autonomous mobility.
It sounds like the massive scale of the private sector of Silicon Valley is the engine that's really driving this innovation. But if this is a national competition, how does the U.S. government factor in? They can't just rely on venture capitalists, can they?
No, the government's role is absolutely critical, and it often acts as the earliest and the most risk-tolerant investor.
The seed money.
The ultimate seed money. State initiatives channel massive funding into AI research through agencies like the National Science Foundation, the NSF for basic research, and more strategically through DARPA.
The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
That's the one. DARPA grants billions every year to AI-driven projects that are explicitly targeted at national security needs. We're talking about developing autonomous robotic warfare systems, securing critical digital infrastructure, enhancing military logistics using predictive AI.
So they're shaping the future of the tech to make sure it has military applications.
Guaranteed. And beyond funding, the U.S. uses its diplomatic muscle to set global AI governance standards. It leads discussions through organizations like the OECD, trying to establish ethical AI frameworks and regulatory guidelines that, well, tend to favor the operational structure of U.S. tech giants.
So we have undeniable U.S. dominance in software, in private investment, in setting global standards. But this brings us to the strategic Achilles heel, the critical choke point we mentioned earlier, semiconductors.
This is the main geopolitical dilemma in this entire tech Cold War 2.0 dynamic, while the U.S. leads the world in chip design.
Companies like NVIDIA, AMD.
Right, the ones creating the advanced processors that power every major AI model. But the U.S. is fundamentally reliant on foreign manufacturing. Specifically, it depends on the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, for producing the most advanced, leading-edge chips.
The ones you absolutely need for serious AI computation.
You can't do it without them. And TSMC's production expertise is so specialized, its scale so vast, that no other place on Earth can currently replicate it.
So the brain is designed in the U.S., but the ability to actually produce that brain in high volume is dependent on a strategically vulnerable island. That is a massive structural geopolitical fault line.
It is. If you're a U.S. policymaker, that reliance has to be terrifying. It is the single greatest vulnerability.
And Taiwan's position has now become the central focus of these new Cold War dynamics.
Absolutely. A disruption there, whether it's political or military, would instantly hobble the entire global technology ecosystem. But it would especially cripple the U.S.'s ability to train advanced AI models.
So what's the response?
The response has been massive. Initiatives like the CHIAPS and Science Act are designed to aggressively consolidate national production capacity. They're offering huge subsidies, we're talking tens of billions of dollars, to lure manufacturing back home to reduce that reliance on foreign supply chains. They're essentially trying to buy back self-sufficiency.
That focus on hardware manufacturing, on self-sufficiency, is a theme we need to carry forward. Because if the U.S. strategy is defined by innovation leadership and controlling global standards, let's turn to China. Their approach is fundamentally different, and it's driven by their own structural vulnerabilities. Section 2. China's distinctive strategy, what they call the embodied AI bet.
This is where the contrast is sharpest. The U.S. focuses largely on large language models, on achieving artificial general intelligence, or AGI, what some people call superhuman AI.
The god in the machine.
Right. Beijing has placed a fundamentally different, and you could argue more grounded, bet. They believe true AI dominance will come from systems that are capable of autonomous, intelligent operation in the physical world. And that's the domain of embodied AI.
Okay, before we go further, we have to clarify that term. When most people hear AI, they think of ChatGPT on their phone or an image generator. What exactly is embodied AI?
That's a really important distinction. Embodied AI refers to hardware systems, physical machines. They integrate advanced software, sophisticated sensors, and intricate control systems. And crucially, these systems are designed to perceive and interpret multimodal inputs.
Multimodal.
Meaning multiple modes of sensing, like a human. We use sight, sound, and touch all at once. Embodied AI systems mimic this. They take in visual data from cameras, audio cues from microphones, even haptic feedback, and they make autonomous decisions based on that complex real-world data and then carry out physical actions.
So this isn't about writing an email. This is about building a car.
Exactly. It's not just about narrowly defined tasks. This includes humanoid robots, quadruped robots for logistics, autonomous vehicles, advanced industrial manipulators, drones. It's the fusion of frontier industrial applications.
So it's not about the digital realm. It's about making tangible goods, moving things, providing services in the physical economy. Why is China prioritizing this path over, say, chasing GPT-5?
This is rooted in what Beijing explicitly calls the real economy rationale. This policy comes directly from President Xi Jinping's economic thought, which was heavily shaped by the lessons of the 2008 global financial crisis.
Right.
That event exposed the huge risks of relying too much on the virtual economy, financial services, digital platforms, speculative ventures. China wants to de-risk its economy by translating advances in generative AI from the purely digital world into the production of tangible goods and essential services.
The things that underpin physical economic activity.
Precisely. The goal is to revitalize sluggish economic growth and insulate the country from external financial shocks.
And beyond the economy, you mentioned a huge structural challenge driving this. This is where the demographics come in, isn't it?
That's the critical piece of the puzzle. China is facing a rapidly aging population, which is creating a massive structural shortage of human labor. This isn't a future problem for them, it's a present crisis.
Embodied AI is the solution.
It's identified as the primary solution. These systems are explicitly meant to substitute human labor in roles where worker shortages are most acute. Think factory floors, construction sites, tasks in extreme temperatures.
The dirty, dangerous, and dull jobs.
Exactly. And beyond that, there's a significant push for these systems to provide elder care services to ease the massive impending burden on a shrinking working-age population. For Beijing, embodied AI isn't just about technological leadership. It's a necessary solution to a national survival problem.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. China has this unique industrial ecosystem advantage that feeds directly into this embodied AI strategy, giving them a huge head start on the actual making of these robots.
That's the crucial factor the U.S. lacks. China provides an unparalleled enabling environment because it has spent decades developing targeted industrial policies covering every single component required for robotics and physical AI systems.
Like what?
High-density batteries, specialized materials, sophisticated sensors like LiDAR, complex mechanical components, and massive electronics manufacturing bases. This proactive, state-backed development has created the world's most robust hardware manufacturing base and supply chain.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means that once the software for an embodied AI system matures, production can be scaled up nationally at lightning speed and at a very low cost. The metrics are just stunning. By 2023, China accounted for half the world's industrial robot installations. Half. And by 2024, domestic vendors held about 90% of the entire mobile robot market share inside China, effectively crowding out any foreign competitors.
Half the world's industrial robots. That feels like a number you have to double check. How did they achieve that scale so quickly? And how is the government managing this massive simultaneous development all across the country?
They're using their proven playbook. Pilot first, scale later. The strategy is devolved. Instead of a single centralized command telling everyone what to build, the government encourages local provinces and academic centers to pilot specific development strategies tailored to their regional strengths.
And the successful ones get scaled up.
The local successes can later be scaled up nationally. For example, provinces like Beijing and Shanghai are channeling investment into specialized segments of the supply chain. Beijing, which is home to leading domestic chip developers like Cambricon, prioritizes high-performance chips designed specifically for the unique demands of embodied AI tasks.
And Shanghai.
Shanghai, which is headquarters for major sensor leaders like Hesai Technology, concentrates on core hardware components like LiDAR, the crucial eyes for autonomous systems.
And this commitment is immense, reflecting that long-term strategic bet. It's backed by serious capital.
Immense is the right word. We're not talking about small grants here. Beijing launched a massive 100 billion RMB fund, that's about 14.3 billion US dollars, with a 15-year lifespan, specifically to support AI and robotics.
And other cities are following suit.
Shanghai established its own embodied AI fund. This devolved, local government-driven approach allows for intense competition among the provinces. Now, it does risk some overcapacity,
With the EV sector.
a direct parallel to what they saw with the initial electric vehicle expansion. But the ultimate goal is to identify and then rapidly fund national champions in the sector.
And we are already seeing compelling examples of this strategy coming to fruition, directly challenging U.S. companies like Tesla.
Absolutely. Look at UB Tech, a Shenzhen-based company. Their industrial humanoid robots are already being tested and deployed in Chinese automakers' factories and, crucially, by Foxconn for advanced iPhone assembly tasks.
So this is happening now.
This is happening right now. They recently secured a significant $35 million order for industrial humanoids from an undisclosed domestic company, which shows real commercial adoption is underway.
And then there's the cost.
Even more tellingly, Unitree, another Chinese firm, demonstrated this massive cost-driving capability by launching a humanoid model for just $5,900.
$5,900.
Right. And you compare that to the projected cost for Tesla's Optimus model, which is only expected to reach production scale in 2026 at an estimated cost of $20,000 to $30,000. You see the massive hardware supply chain advantage China has. They can deliver deployable physical AI at a fraction of the cost, years sooner.
That massive push into the physical world, coupled with their sheer manufacturing scale, sets up the ultimate challenge for U.S. dominance. Let's move to Section 3 and discuss the DeepSeek shock and how Chinese efficiency is fundamentally changing the global AI race, not just in hardware, but in cutting-edge software.
This is where we hit the AI Sputnik moment that really occurred in early 2025. It was a huge wake-up call.
For Washington.
For Washington. U.S. lawmakers, tech executives, they expressed deep concern that the United States' lead over China in foundational AI was eroding far faster than anyone anticipated. The comparisons were immediate to the original Cold War anxiety triggered by the Soviet satellite launch in 1957.
So what was the realization?
The realization hitting Washington was critical. While the U.S. still leads in breakthrough innovation, the sheer novelty of the ideas, China is proving resilient and, frankly, better at turning that innovation into scalable, affordable tools.
And the reason China is gaining ground is because they're capitalizing on a fundamental constraint facing all AI development globally. The massive and ultimately unsustainable reliance on compute scaling.
That's exactly right. For the past decade, AI progress was largely just a matter of building bigger and bigger models that required more and more compute power, mainly from advanced GPUs.
Throw more money, more chips at the problem.
Exactly. But that reliance on computing power is approaching hard physical bottlenecks. The most immediate one is the staggering requirement for electricity and cooling. It is becoming financially and logistically impossible to keep pushing AI forward simply by building larger data centers filled with the most expensive processors.
So that bottleneck is forcing what you call the efficiency turn.
The efficiency turn. It's about optimizing everything: process techniques, architecture design, training methods for both software and hardware. And because China is facing U.S. export controls on those high-end chips, necessity has become the mother of invention. They are now excelling at this optimization.
And the prime example, the shock that really reset the race, was DeepSeek. What exactly did DeepSeek R1 achieve that wiped $1 trillion off the U.S. market?
DeepSeek R1 delivered performance metrics that were comparable to the leading proprietary U.S. models, specifically OpenAI's GPT-4, but at an incredibly tiny fraction of the resources.
That's a fraction of the cost.
The developers spent approximately $6 million on computing power to train the model. You compare that to GPT-4's estimated advancement cost, which was well over $100 million.
Wow. How did they do that?
They achieved this breakthrough by optimizing the architecture and the training data usage, and they often use less advanced hardware than their Western counterparts. This signals a powerful resilience. It demonstrates China's capacity to innovate and compete effectively, even when restrictions are trying to cut off their access to the best chips.
So if you can achieve 90% of the performance for 5% of the cost, the competitive equation changes entirely.
It changes everything.
The financial aftershock in the U.S. tech market wasn't just a ripple. It was immediate and absolutely severe, confirming just how serious this shift was.
It was a moment of sheer panic. After news of DeepSeek's efficiency and performance broke, the shares of U.S. high-tech firms suffered a massive combined market loss exceeding $1 trillion in value.
$1 trillion.
NVIDIA, the primary hardware provider whose whole business model relies on the need for ever more expensive scaling, dropped 17%. That decreased the company's market value by about $600 billion.
Yeah, the others.
Google's parent company, Alphabet, lost $100 billion. Microsoft faced losses of $7 billion. This was a clear, painful market reaction reflecting the sudden, palpable increase in Chinese competitiveness and the threat to the high-margin, proprietary Western model.
Now, let's talk about the specific strategy underpinning this efficiency. China's open source offensive. You compare this to the solar panel playbook running on software. Walk us through that analogy.
The analogy is perfect because we've seen this exact strategy play out before. Just as China aggressively subsidized and scaled up solar panel manufacturing, flooding the world market with affordable, viable alternatives that completely undermined established high-cost European and American manufacturers.
They're doing the same thing with AI models.
Exactly the same thing. Chinese models, DeepSeek, Qwen from Alibaba, Kimi K2 from Moonshot, GLM, they are often open weight, meaning they make their trained parameters publicly available. They were free to download, they're significantly cheaper to run in some cases, up to 40 times cheaper than using proprietary APIs from a company like OpenAI, and they allow any user, anywhere, to independently deploy and modify the systems.
So they're commoditizing the underlying tech.
It's a deliberate strategy to commoditize it, drive rapid global adoption, and in doing so, demonstrate the complete failure of U.S. export controls to actually halt their progress.
And this cost advantage is leading to quiet but profound adoption, even in Silicon Valley, which is supposed to be the beating heart of U.S. AI dominance. This shows the power of economics over ideology.
Exactly. The evidence suggests this is more than just a trend. It's a structural migration for any cost-conscious developer. Chinese open models have become a de facto standard among many U.S. startups.
Do we have specific examples?
We have high-profile examples. Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky confirmed that his company opted for Alibaba's Qwen over ChatGPT. He praised it as fast and cheap and perfectly adequate for their internal use.
Okay, that's a big one.
And Social Capital publicly discussed migrating much of its work to Moonshot's Kimi K2, finding it way more performant for specific tasks and a ton cheaper. And beyond that, evidence emerged that popular U.S.-developed coding assistants, Composer and Windsurf, were actually built on top of Chinese foundational models.
So the market efficiency and the necessity just trumps geopolitical rhetoric.
Hard for developers building actual products every single time.
So even if you're using a U.S.-branded application, the engine running your experience might be based on a cheaper open-source model developed in Beijing. This is about more than just geopolitics. It's about the software ecosystem we all live in. But this openness, this affordability, it has to come with a major downside concerning security and data.
It absolutely does, and this is the price of that openness. The open-weight nature presents both security and profound misuse risks.
How so?
Well, unlike closed proprietary models where the developing company builds in safety guardrails and retains control, open-weight models can be easily downloaded and modified to remove any and all safety constraints.
Which enables malicious applications.
It enables things like the easy generation of automated cyber attack code or the creation of massive disinformation campaigns. It effectively lowers the barriers to entry for all kinds of harmful uses.
And we already have specific real-world examples of scrutiny related to data handling.
That's right. Take the specific security scrutiny DeepSeek faced. South Korea's data protection watchdog, the Personal Information Protection Commission, formally accused DeepSeek of transferring user prompts and device information without consent.
And where was that data going?
It was allegedly being routed to Volcano Engine, which is a Beijing-based cloud service. The application was subsequently removed from various app stores in February 2025. This incident just highlights the fundamental concern. When you're using these affordable, highly efficient foreign models, users and governments risk compromising data sovereignty and security.
Which complicates their adoption in any kind of sensitive sector. That security scrutiny perfectly pivots us to Section 4, which is all about the global consequence of this rivalry: geopolitical fracturing, alliance formation, and the creation of a fundamentally bifurcated digital world.
If we connect this back to the broader picture of defensive realism, the AI rivalry is now actively driving the formation of strategic, tech-driven geopolitical alliances, with the Indo-Pacific region emerging as the clear focal point.
So states are being forced to choose a side.
States across the globe, especially middle powers, are being forced to align their technological infrastructure and their regulatory regimes with either the U.S. or China, and that is fundamentally shaping new trends of international partnership and rivalry.
Let's start with the U.S.-led alliance aimed specifically at countering China's rise, the Quad.
The Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, that's the United States, Australia, India, and Japan. And it is explicitly arranged as a strategic adjustment to China's increasing technological dominance. Its stated purpose is to promote democratic values in technology, chart new directions for next-gen tech, and establish collective AI governance.
And it's supposed to be a division of labor, right, based on each country's strengths.
That's the idea. The U.S. leads in machine learning and foundational AI. India excels in big data analytics due to its vast population base. Japan leads in advanced robotics. And Australia excels in computing foundations and speech science.
That sounds like an ideal, powerful combination of complementary skills. But the sources point out a significant and a curious paradox regarding the Quad's actual level of collaboration in AI.
The paradox is striking. Despite the formal structure and the shared geopolitical goals, intra-Quad AI partnerships remain minimal. The sources note that these four countries produce only about 4% of co-authored international AI research papers.
4%? That's surprisingly low.
It's very low, given the strategic mandate. And we need to explore why. The reasons are manifold. They face conflicting national data privacy laws, different regulatory standards that make cross-border data sharing really complicated,
And internal politics.
and internal political pressures, particularly in India and Australia, regarding their economic dependencies on China that constrain their ability to fully decouple technologically. The reality is that China remains an incredibly important research and economic partner for many of these Quad countries.
Which just highlights how deep its ties still run globally, even as political tensions are rising.
Exactly.
Then there is IUQS, the Trilateral Security Partnership focused heavily on defense technology.
RUC Australia, the UK, and the US is a security partnership announced back in September 2021. Its primary goal is to settle the balance of China's strengthening leverage and coordinate efforts for regional stability.
And while the headlines were all about the nuclear submarines for Australia,
Right, while that's the most famous component, the partnership also focuses intensely on integrating emerging and disruptive technologies. We're talking AI, quantum computing, digital infrastructure protection, hypersonic weapons. The underlying investment here is to rapidly transform military alignments and gain a tangible technological edge in defense, specifically to offset China's advancements in those areas.
so how is China responding to all this alliance building, which is explicitly designed to contain its technological rise?
Well, China views both the Quad and IUS as existential security threats. They often characterize them as embodying a Cold War mentality designed to encircle Beijing.
So what are their counter strategies?
They're focused on enhancing their own defense capabilities, leveraging the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, to advance economic and tech supremacy in developing nations, and deepening collaborations with strategic partners like Russia. Beijing has intensified its domestic tech investment in AI, quantum, and IT to ensure a leading position.
And they're advocating for a counter-ideology.
A counter-ideology centered on digital autonomy and sustainable, non-Western-aligned AI tech development.
The ultimate result of this competition, then, isn't really containment anymore, is it? It's the creation of a bifurcated world, two distinct competing digital architectures that can't easily speak to one another.
That is the medium-term reality we are barreling toward. We are seeing a shift from containment to block formation, where your technological infrastructure is no longer neutral, it is inherently ideological.
One system on one side.
One system revolves around the core Western stack. ARM architecture, NVIDIA GPUs, Western data norms built mostly on premium proprietary models. The other is coalescing around Huawei's Ascend chips, alternative open standard hardware architectures like RSCV, and China's own evolving AI governance frameworks.
And relying on open-weight models like DeepSeek. The world is dividing not just by values, but by compute capacity, regulatory regimes, and software lock-ins.
That's it.
Wait, you mentioned RACV. For our listener, that's another key piece of jargon we should probably unpack. What is RSCV, and why is it so crucial to China's pursuit of digital autonomy?
That's a vital piece of context. RISC-V is a non-proprietary instruction set architecture. You can think of it as the basic DNA of a computer chip.
Okay.
Now, unlike proprietary architectures like ARM, which is dominant globally but requires licenses that can be revoked by Western governments, RISC-V is an open standard. It's royalty-free, available for anyone to use and customize.
So for China, and specifically for giants like Huawei building things like the Ascend chips,
Embracing RISC-V is a strategic imperative. It allows them to design and manufacture chips tailored for their needs, like for embodied AI, without any fear of U.S. sanctions or export control risks. It is the architectural foundation for their independent, sovereign digital system.
and we are seeing this ideological battle play out as chip diplomacy, turning data centers into geopolitical fault lines, especially in rich, energy-abundant regions like the Gulf.
It's a classic example of competition for influence. A prime case came when the Trump administration offered a selective reprieve to high-performance chip restrictions. They agreed to ship advanced processors to Gulf allies, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, reversing some of the Biden-era controls.
But there was a condition.
An explicit condition. These countries had to promise to build their massive new data centers based on U.S. technology standards and infrastructure.
So these Gulf states, flush with capital and cheap electricity, are being drawn in as critical participants, not just observers.
Exactly. Their choice of infrastructure and standards effectively decides which technological bloc they belong to, which gives the U.S. a powerful lever to export its digital architecture.
This brings us to Southeast Asia, which is facing an acute dilemma caught directly between these two technological giants.
Southeast Asia, or ASEAN, is economically constrained by China, which remains the region's largest external trading partner. This relationship just makes full technological decoupling impossible.
And they're seeing a massive influx of Chinese tech.
A massive, accelerating influx of Chinese industrial ecosystem components. For example, China's exports of factory robots, part of that embodied AI push, increased by nearly 60% in the first half of 2025 to countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and Thailand. The Chinese industrial ecosystem is rapidly taking root.
So the ASEAN actors face a difficult binary choice.
A very difficult choice. Risk becoming technology takers, relying on the cheaper open-weight Chinese models, which means compromising on data security, or proactively foster alternative partnerships with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan to navigate this G2 division and maintain some semblance of technological autonomy. It's a very difficult tightrope to walk.
That brings us to our final thought. We've covered the U.S. innovation leadership, China's efficiency and resilience driven by DeepSeek and embodied AI, and the global fracturing this competition is causing. So what does this all mean for the immediate future?
It means the U.S.-China competition will continue to mold the world economy and military operational areas for years to come. The tension between U.S. innovation leadership in proprietary LLMs and China's resilience and efficiency gains. That's a permanent state of affairs now.
And the most urgent conclusion for U.S. policymakers.
Based on the sources, it's accepting that America and China will be running side by side in AI development for the foreseeable future. Neither side is likely to gain a decisive, overwhelming edge, largely because of China's proven ability to innovate around hardware restrictions.
But the greatest risk we face may not be these two giants competing, but the inherent accessibility of the technology itself.
That's the ultimate shared challenge. The greatest risk may actually come from rogue states and non-state actors exploiting the dual-use nature and the accessibility of AI.
It's not like nuclear weapons.
Not at all. Nuclear weapons require complex infrastructure, enriched uranium. AI is far more accessible and much harder to monitor. Terrorist groups, rogue regimes, or even lone wolf actors operating outside conventional deterrence could weaponize AI to scale their destructive capabilities.
And the amplification effect of open source models, especially the cheap, efficient ones, just lowers the barriers to entry.
It enables large-scale attacks that were previously limited only to well-resourced nation-states.
That low barrier to entry for weaponizing open source models, that's the true wild card. It undermines the hyperlogical deterrence model of the past.
Precisely. This invisibility of the threat complicates retaliation and fundamentally intensifies strategic stress globally. The core problem for the world is that we are being forced to choose between two technological models.
The Chinese model versus the American one.
We have the model that prioritizes affordability and pervasive adoption. That's China's open-source, cost-efficient approach, versus the model that prioritizes differentiation, premium performance, and institutional trust, the premium proprietary U.S. models.
That is the critical question for every government, and for you, the listener, to mull over. How will nations balance the need for cheap, deployable AI to solve urgent real-world problems like energy efficiency or elder care, against the fundamental concerns about data sovereignty, national security, and the inherent safety risks posed by open, easily modifiable technology? The outcome of that balancing act will not only shape our digital infrastructure, but it will define the geopolitical alliances of the next generation. Thank you for joining us for the Deep Dive.